On this episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast.
Do we always need the last word? Do we correct them more than we encourage them? Are we open to receiving feedback about our parenthood, even from our children? Do we focus on their outward behavior and not what's going on in their heart? Do we go to God about our children? Do we ask Him for the plans and for the wisdom? Do we have the humility in our heart if God was to tell us to take them from a certain thing or shift in a certain way? Do we have the love and the humility in our heart to do this thing to make sure that our child is operating in their best according to God's will and according to God's standards? If God specifically says, hey, this is not what you need to do right now, if God specifically says, hey, I don't want you operating in that right now, you need to be able to loosen your grip enough for your child to be obedient to Christ and not to fear you. You need to be loosening your grip enough to just support that child in the decision that they are making. You want to make sure, or I've learned to make sure, that I am not so self-righteous in their life and so controlling in their life that they know that I'm an ally, right? I'm not an enemy. I am an ally.
It is the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast.
So why would I walk away if God said I can handle it? If He has endowed me with dunamis power that lives in me, how can I live defeated?
But one of the things that I realized was that I'm a person too.
You're in the wilderness and you don't even realize it. And so now we walk around with the spirit of offense and unforgiveness and anger and bitterness. And God has to get that stuff off of us first.
Thriving Decrees for the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss is not just a book, but it is a power tool made for the leader in you as a wife, as a mother, as a business entrepreneur, and as a minister. Whatever is inside of us, it pours out of us in our leadership. And so this book was curated to ensure that the very best of you is what is being poured out. It was created to help you heal, overcome, and conquer everything that tries to hold you down from being the thriving leader that you were created to be. Make sure you go to my website at www.clemetradeshay.com and order your copy. Hey, Kingdom Wife Mom Boss, thank you so much for joining me today on another episode of the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast. Before we get started, are you on my email list? If you are not on my email list, I need you to go to my website and go to contact and make sure that you register to get on the email list so that we can stay in constant communication. It is literally in addition to what you get on the Monday podcast. I send out emails just weekly. Offers that I have, I send it out to my community. I don't send them out anywhere else, just people who are already connected and joined to me. So if you are not on my email list, make sure you go to my website at www.clemetradeshay.com and get on my email list. I'll be so happy to have you. All right, let's get into it, y'all. I had a child this weekend. I was like, listen, God, Holy Spirit, first of all, is always gonna grab me up by my pearls. He's gonna do it. And he didn't really have to do that this time, because we've had to practice this so often of just making sure that I have full understanding before I step in and try to discipline or correct a child. And so this child, I had been telling him all week to get something done. He waited until the last minute, which what I needed him to get done also required my attention. Well, it was a busy day at work. And of course, he waited until the last minute and he called me. He needed me to do my part. And I was super frustrated. But I was like, okay, it's fine. So I just did what I needed to do. I came home and saw that I had some clean towels. I washed these towels
Someone put them in a dryer. I came home. When I walked in the door, I saw that they were on the floor in the washroom. Y'all. I was like, okay, I immediately knew that it was this child. Okay, I walked in the child room, fans on. Like I've told this child 10,000 times to turn the fans off when you leave. He likes to sleep extra cold, so he has fans. It's fine. But I've told him 10,000 times, turn the fans off before you leave the house. And then, oh, God, oh, I come to find out the kid's not even home. Where the kid is, I don't know because he didn't tell me he was going anywhere and he is underage. So I guess they had some kind of Christian, like fellow Christian athlete meeting at a church somewhere. And he had his sister drop him off. He will always rope his sister into his um, disobedience, I guess I'll say. And so he told his sister to drop him off. I didn't know anything about it. And so the first thing that I started to do was call him and text him. But once my daughter told me where he was, I didn't want him to take his mind off of what he was doing. And I could have been incredibly self righteous in that moment because you're not even supposed to be there. Like, you haven't even said that you were going. Not that it was a problem for him to go, but you haven't even said where you were going, said what you were doing. You just took off. And I'm finding out by accident that this is where you are and this is where you're doing. And then he told his sister that it's over at 8. At this point I still hadn't talked to him. And I did get a little flippant mouth because my daughter was like, "Hey, should I just come home?" Because she had practice for something else. She was like, "Hey, should I just come home and is somebody going to get him later?" And this is when I was like, "Where even is he?" And this is when she explained everything to me. And I said, "No, I didn't even know he was gone. For all I care, he can walk home." I did. I said it, y'all. I had to take it back, but I did say it. And so she waited because she's sister and she loves her brother very dearly. She waited. She was out of practice at 7 something, so she waited because she didn't want to come all the way home because she thought he was getting out at 8. This kid did not get out until like 9:30. So she sat in the car this whole time waiting. Now, in this moment, like, I'm assuming that she had already told him on the way home what happened because when he walked in the door, he walks in my room and he was just looking at me and I was like, "Yes." Like at this point, I'm good. Me and God had already had a conversation about, okay, how are we going to handle this situation? So he walks in the room. He's like, "Yes." I mean, he looks at me and I'm like, "Yes." And he said, "I'd rather get yelled at now." And I said, I'm not, I'm okay. Let's start by some questions. And this is how we did it. I questioned him about waiting until the last minute, and he took accountability for it. He said he did. Okay. And I asked him, why did he put the towels on the floor? And he said when he got them out of the dryer, he realized that they didn't smell that great. So he put them on the floor so that they could be rewashed. Okay. I asked him about the fans. He confessed to it. He said he forgot. I asked him about the meeting. He said that he told me he had something going on, but he didn't tell me what the specific was because he didn't know at the time. All of them, at least 3 out of them, like, you're still in the wrong. And originally, my thought was to put him on punishment. But then it was beautiful for me because he took accountability of all the things and he understood all the things. And so I didn't put him on punishment. We just had a conversation about it. And we were done with it. And I'm so curious as to if you would have put this child on punishment. Please put it in the comments if you feel like you would have put this child on punishment after dealing or hearing or seeing all of these things that happened in one day. Not to mention work was insane. So I was already like, ah, and then come home and deal with that. So I'm very curious as to what you would do. But here is what I want to talk about. In certain moments when we as moms are spiritually higher or knowledgeably higher or wisdom wise higher, if we do not do this thing with the fear of God in our hearts, it can be so easy to become self righteous in the situation because we know so much. Sometimes it's done out of a method of protection, not necessarily a method of it becomes pride, but it's we're trying to protect our children. We're trying to make sure that they understand. We're trying to make sure that they know the experiences that we have. We're trying to pass that along as wisdom. And what I've really learned so far is that everybody is going to make their own mistakes. We are going to pour things into our children and say things into our children, and they're still going to go out into the world and do what interests them. Now, a lot of what we say to them sticks, right? And so either they won't do the thing or they'll do the thing and the thing will turn out badly and they'll remember that someone had a conversation with them about it. Okay. So, some signs that you as a mother, or some signs for me as a mother, for when I'm being self righteous in a situation. I would criticize small mistakes or different choices instead of seeking to understand and support, knowing that I'm me and they are them. I've had to learn how to do that. They're not going to always like what I like. I'm not going to always like what they like. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is wrong. It might be a different way. It might not look like what I think it should look like, but that does not mean that it is wrong. And if I try to overpower them and overtalk them and overcome them in what it is that they're doing, it can be a form of self righteousness because I can feel like my way is literally the only way. It can give you a holier than thou type of attitude, which is another way that you know that you're probably operating in some form of self righteousness. You think that what you want, what you seek, your morals are better than everyone else's. And pride can blind us from seeing how we are controlling or manipulating even our children. It can cause us to just be completely blinded to how we are responding to our children. It's not seeking to take blame from your for your own mistakes and for the things that you did. You want to blame someone else, like this person made you do this and this person made you do that. You didn't want to respond in this way, but this person made you. If that's the case, then you have no self-control, and you really need to get some Holy Spirit on the inside of you so that you can have a form of self-control, right? When we talk about the fruit of the spirit, self control is one of those things: love, joy, peace, right? Kindness, gentleness, goodness, all of those things, self control, and having patience with others, long suffering. Those are fruits of the spirit. You can be closed minded, refusing to listen to new ideas, refusing to listen to advice, even from your children. Like, when God created your children, He didn't not create them dumb. He gave them wisdom and He gave them a special gift. And sometimes, as parents, when we're trying to control or manipulate our children to be a certain way or to do a certain thing, it can stifle the gift. Like, it can literally smother out the thing that God has placed on the inside of them, to where our children become so incredibly lost that they don't know who they are, because the natural thing that God has placed on the inside of them is being smothered out, and they can't operate in it, or they don't even understand it to any type of certain degree, because we wanted to control it a certain way, right? um Being self-righteous as a mom is detrimental, incredibly hurtful to our children. It keeps them from growing. It makes them feel like they will never measure up to the person that they could be, that God has called for them to be. As a matter of fact, they don't even look, my God, you almost become their God, because they're not even looking to God anymore to give them the wisdom and the information that they need, because we've set the bar, we've set the standard. And sometimes it is above what is being able to achieve. I don't know if I said this in a podcast or if I wrote it in a book. I told y'all I can't remember stuff anymore like that. But there was a year that we did competitive cheer at a gym on the beach, and I loved it. I wanted to go back to it, but I very specifically the next year heard God tell me no more competitive cheer right now. And I didn't want to say it to my daughter. So I was just like, Lord, if this is something that you want, I need you to put it in her heart, because I felt like it was going to hurt her feelings. But I also told her she needed to look at doing like school cheer. I think we were going into the 8th grade because that's the only year she did middle school. So we were going into the 8th grade, and I said, hey, we need to look at doing school cheer, because I knew she wanted to cheer for high school. And God literally did put it in her heart to where she was like, no, I don't want to go back. It was right after COVID. So she was like, no, I don't want to go back this year. Let's just wait and see how everything picks up. And then, I'll go back another year. And for me, that was a moment where I knew God was telling me to do something, but I was asking His grace to step in and to communicate that to her heart, so that I wouldn't feel like I was like I didn't want her to think that I was micromanaging her time. I was micromanaging the things that she wanted to do. And God was able to really just step in and speak His truth into her heart, to where she was like, no, I'm not going to do that this year. And for me, that is one of the foundations, one of the stepping tools that I've had to learn over the years, is asking God to speak to my child. Even if they don't recognize the voice of God, if God is instructing me in a specific way to talk to one of my children about something, or to shift their actions in a certain way, I ask him immediately to please step in, because as mothers raising these children to be kingdom minded, we sincerely need the presence and the grace of God to go with us. Otherwise, number one, we could be doing this on our own accord, which is not the way that God has instructed for us to do this. Yes, we are stewards over our children, but God is the one who teaches us how to show them how to walk. But when He steps in and He touches their heart and He puts this thing on their mind, it makes the shift and the turnaround so much more beautiful, so much more easy, to where we're not pulling this out of ourselves and doing this in a way that can cause harm or damage within the relationship of you and your child. Whenever we are doing this thing and we're not inviting God into it, we can build up resistance in our children. And I know for sure that is not something that a godly mother seeks to do, because when your child goes out into the world, you definitely want them to still call you and have conversations with you and be open with you, so that hopefully, God can allow you to speak into their life what you need to speak into their life for that moment. And if you have built up resistance, it will discourage honesty in your children. If you've been so controlling and you want everything your way and you don't take accountability for anything, or you're always pointing the finger at your children, it can make them dishonest to the point where they won't tell you the truth. They literally just won't talk to you at all. I've come across a couple of parents in the healthcare field when I'm talking to patients. I've come across a couple of parents who will say things like, their children don't talk to them anymore. And it makes me incredibly sad, because, baby, when my mama would say, I talk to her single day. Every single day of my life. I was incredibly grateful for my mother, and I talked to my mother. And so when I meet these ladies who say that, their children hadn't talked to them in years, I want to dig a little, I want to dig a little bit, but I can't always dig a little bit. But it literally breaks my heart to hear a mother say that they haven't talked to their child in years. And it makes me think, okay, there's something there that needs to be healed. There's something there that needs to be forgiven. But if we're operating in a spirit of self-righteousness, we're never going to completely take accountability for, recognize, or even take accountability for the thing that we need to be healed in the relationship, the thing that we need to be forgiven in the relationship. When you're coming to the table and having a child to try, having a conversation with your child to try to figure out, like, what's going on, to try to figure out, how do I
get our relationship better, you have to go in the spirit of humility, and self-righteousness definitely is not the spirit of humility. Here are some signs that you may be struggling with self-righteousness. You need the last word. You always need the last word. You feel like because you're the parent, you're the child, you're the adult, and they're the child, that you have to get the last word in. Instead of humbling yourself. Listen, all of these things I'm saying, I feel like God literally had to teach me not to do. I definitely felt like I had to get the last word in sometimes. And there will be times where you later find out that you're wrong. Are you willing to go back and apologize to your child for this thing? Listen, if you have some built up resistance, some built up tension between you and your child, you, number one, you do have to check yourself. Are you now, or were you then, operating in a spirit of self righteousness that caused some resentment in your child? Were you needing the last word? Were you not apologizing to your child when you were wrong? Did you correct them more than you encouraged them? Hear me saying more than you encouraged them. Were you in comparison of family? I've made that mistake before with one of my children. We were talking about tumbling. We were talking about tumbling, and I was like, "Oh, so and so got their tumble," and I didn't mean to say it in a comparison way, but that was how she took it. She was already feeling down. She was already feeling frustrated, and I made mention of this, and she took it as a comparison. And in that moment, I could have let pride raise his ugly head. But what I needed to do was just let that child know that they're doing a great job and that they don't have to compare themselves to others. I remember having this conversation where I was talking about how, especially sports moms, we're so weird. Like, at some point, you're weird. And then at some point, hopefully you let the love of Christ and the wisdom of Christ come into your heart and you do this thing from a different perspective. But we compare our children to other children all of the time. Baseball, football, cheer, soccer, basketball, track, like whatever, gymnastics. Gymnastics and cheer is the worst, yo. And dance. We compare our children to other children all the time, making them try to live up to someone else's standard. And I'm so grateful for the times that God has taught me not to do that, and to just let these kids grow the way that they needed to grow. Does that mean that we don't have conversations like, hey, we need to work on this and we need to work on that? No, absolutely. But it means that we have to encourage them more than we correct them or compare them to other people in the sports. It's a it's a cheer pandemic. A majority of the kids that like grow up doing cheer, when they get into college, they don't want to do cheer. And although I know it's for many different reasons, I have to believe, like from what I've seen, a lot of it is from parents who force their children to do these things so that they can say, oh, my child does this thing. My child does this thing. Listen, it literally is the open hand, the open palm. Like God put this in your hand, but like loosen your grip enough for him to be able to take this thing away. If God specifically says, "Hey, this is not what you need to do right now." If God specifically says, "Hey, I don't want you operating in that right now." You need to be able to loosen your grip enough for your child to be obedient to Christ and not to fear you. You need to be loosening your grip enough to just support that child in the decision that they are making. You want to make sure, or I've learned to make sure, that I am not so self-righteous in their life and so controlling in their life that they know that I'm an ally, right? I'm not an enemy. I am an ally. We can make ourselves enemies to our children by how much we try to control their lives, especially if your child is one who thinks that they don't need no help, or
they're a little prideful, right? Trying to control them will literally just further hinder the relationship that you have. I'm not saying that your child is perfect. I'm not saying that my children are perfect, but what I am saying is for me as being a good steward over my children, it will require me to learn how to operate and how to have difficult conversations with my children in a way that does not further push them away, even if they don't want to hear what it is that I am saying. That is what we need the grace of God for. We want to make sure that we have, girl, in Bible for generations and generations. I mean, scripture does says that a man and a woman, they, they'll leave their parents, they'll cleave to one another. And that is so. But if you pay attention in the Bible, like family always stayed in the camp, right? So you had children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, like all in the camp, all working together. And nowadays, you have daughters who believe that their parents hate them, believe that their mothers. I remember I saw a post from this girl. She posted, she said, "Can we just be real and just say that mothers hate their daughters?" And that broke my heart because that was her legit perspective. That was her real life perspective, is that she felt like mothers hated their daughters. And that was likely because that was her true life. That was her real world. That was what she had experienced. And if she had a daughter, she probably poured that mindset into that daughter. I got to do a prayer meeting this past weekend. And in this prayer meeting, the thing that I was praying for was mind binding spirits. And some of the things that we experience in childhood, some of the things that we experience throughout life become trauma to our mind that we pour into our children. Maybe our parents or our grandparents or all of the above were controlling. Maybe they were abused and so they were aggressive in conversations. Maybe they were dismissive. Maybe they didn't think that anything that their child said was correct and it had to be their way or no way. And sometimes that mindset gets poured into that child, and that child grows up to be an adult and a mother, and then she pours that mindset into, like, it is a generational thing sometimes where you'll see families where the child is always inferior. And a child is not necessarily inferior just because the parent knows more and the parent can do more. We should not be making that child walk in a spirit of inferiority where she feels like she can, or he either feel like he or she can never measure up to a level of success or accomplishments because we've set the bar so high in our own self-righteousness, thinking that this person, this child, needs to raise up to this standard for me to see them as equal, for me to see them as a human being. Like, that is insane. There are families where parents don't even love their kids sincerely unless they're a certain way. There are families that have multiple kids where this kid feels like they can never measure up because this kid has been placed on a pedestal because they've hit a certain mark and maybe this kid hadn't hit the mark yet. That is insane. But it happens every single day where parents believe that their way is the own way, their own way. They won't listen to what's going on with this child so they can very specifically figure out what this child needs. I have 4 kids. If I have figured out anything, is that every child is different and every child needs a different aspect of me. They do not all need the same version of me. They all need different versions of me. And I've had to sit with God and ask him, okay, God, what does this child need? Man, that is where being intentional about sitting with God every month, every week, whenever you have to, and asking him what's going on with this child, what's going on with this child, what's going on. He will reveal spirits that your child has the spirit of, or that your child is dealing with the spirit of, and here is what they need. And if as a parent, I think I know best. As a parent, if I think that I don't need to submit my parenthood to God, then I'm gonna mess something up. I'm gonna mess my child up. I'm not going to equip him with what he needs to really go out into the world and be successful, because God has a plan for him. And at the end of the day, it is my job to check with God to figure out what that plan is, to figure out how to raise this child. And I thank God for him teaching me that, because I promise you, it has not always been this way. If you talk to a couple of people, they'll probably tell you that they think that I wasn't a great child because I was disciplining my child. Listen, I'm gonna tell y'all something. My child now, my 3-year-old, soon to be 4-year-old, she is a wild child. She's a wild child. I love her so much. She's so sweet and she's so kind, but she's a wild child. And I know me, however many years ago, 12 years ago, whatever, if that was the situation, I would be disciplining her, because in the beginning of my parenthood, I felt like this is how you got to get a child to listen. Like, you got to discipline this child. And I don't mean whippings. I mean just like sitting in a corner, or you can't have this, or you can't, like, you got to discipline this child. You got to rule with an iron fist. You got to do it. This is the only way that you're going to do it. And one day, God woke me up and shook me and helped me to see that I was not helping my children by being a disciplinarian. I was not helping them at all. And it was all around the same turning point when I asked God, what does this one child need? Because discipline ain't working. Like, what does this one child need? And that was when he told me that this child needed love. This child needed more love. And in my little tiny mind, I couldn't understand it, because how does a child that is rebellious and acting out not need the discipline that I was giving, right? And it wasn't that they didn't need discipline. They didn't need the kind of discipline that I was giving them. They needed something different. And so when God told me this, I mean, obviously I had to be obedient. And over the years, I have been so blessed to be able to just check in with him to say, hey, what is this child dealing with, and what does this child need, and how do I talk to this child, and what should I do with this child? And he has been so amazing at showing me how to mother each individual child differently. And I've been able to see the change in, especially specifically, I've been able to see the change in this one specific child, and what it is that they needed from what I was giving them, and how God shifted me in that area. And so with my child now, my wild child, I think that people want me to discipline her a little bit more. And I'm like, no, that's not, I don't care at this point. I literally do not care what anyone thinks about me and my mothering, because I know that I sit with God and I ask God what each child needs, how to take care of each child. And He gives me wisdom and He gives me instruction. And so it doesn't matter what the world looks at me and says, it doesn't matter what the world looks at me and thinks that I should do with my children. Thank you for your opinion, but if it doesn't flow with what it is that God is instructing for me to do, I will not be accepting it. I will not be implementing the thing that you're wanting me to implement in my life. Am I saying that it makes my life easier to not discipline a child? No, it's just not. But my job is not always to just think about myself and what I want. I have to focus on how these children are being shaped and how they're being developed, in the sense of what God says about them and how God loves them, and showing them God's love through the way that I love them. Now, not to mention, right? We have to remind ourselves that God's love also includes a level of discipline. Includes structure. It includes judgment. It includes all of these things. But my God, when we do it through the love of Christ, when we do it through His eyes, it's no longer a form of self-righteousness, because we're going to be doing it in His righteousness, in His truth. His righteousness and his truth completely supersedes our righteousness and our truth, because our righteousness and our truth is compromised. It is tainted. And so whenever we're looking to do this thing, we got to do it through his eyes. It will strengthen our relationships with our children. And I listen, baby, I'm gonna apologize real quick. One day I was apologizing, and I was like, "Dang, you apologize a lot, sis," because I'm wrong sometimes. Yo, I'm wrong, flat out wrong. I assume, or I let emotions get the best of me. Um, I think that a child should have a certain level of understanding, and if they don't have the understanding, sometimes it's very hard to be like, it can be hard to have grace in moments. It's like, you should know this, but I always have to go back and apologize. Like, that is a prayer that we need to have. Like, Lord, please do not let me operate in a form of self-righteousness to the point where I can't apologize to my child when I'm wrong. Holy Spirit, grip me with conviction when I am wrong in this area and I need to apologize to my kid. Your kids are going to be amazing. They're going to grow up and do great and amazing and mighty things. Like, I know that you want to be a part of their life when they come out from underneath your teaching or your household. You're going to want to still be a part of their life. For me, I do anyway. I want to make sure that they know that I'm here. I want to make sure that they know that they can come to me about anything. And yes, you might receive some correction, you might receive some information and some wisdom. But I want them to know that it comes out of a place of love and not necessarily a place of judgment. That I'm not judging them, that I'm teaching them. And for me, that is something that I could only have achieved by having the humility to go to the Lord and say, Lord, you made me parents over these kids. I'm thinking about Moses. Moses was like, you made me lead these people. Anyways, you made me parents over these kids, and now I really need you to teach me how to be the steward that you're calling for me to be over them, to lead them into a place of your purpose, your plans, and your promises for them. What do you need me to show them? What do you need me to pour into them? And it's not easy. My God, it's not easy. Because although, we've developed these relationships and we have these conversations, sometimes things are really hard to break off and out of your children. And they're going out into this world every single day life and into these schools, and they're coming across these people, and these people start pouring their mind. Oh my God, these people start pouring their minds into your children. And there are times where when you are fighting the mind of your children, and I don't mean like physically fighting or arguing, fighting, where you are spiritually recognizing a certain aspect of your child's mind, and you're having to fight the mind of this child. It's the mind that someone else has poured into them, that has gone into them, and you're having to fight the mind of this child. The music that they listen to, the shows that they watch, it's all of the things, and you're having to fight this mindset. And so it's not always super easy, but it does become more peaceful even in the fight when you know that God is saying to you, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to respond. It took me, oh my God, let me count these years. It probably took me about 5 or 6 years before I really got to see a turnaround in one of these children's one of these children's that I was asking God about, and he was instructing me on how to take care of the child. It took me quite a few years to see that what had been poured into this child from godly wisdom, trying to be a godly mother to the child, was actually working. Like I could see the turnaround, I could see the shift, I could see the change. And after to which I had a conversation with this child and I was like, hey, who you were yesterday is in the past. You don't have to be that person. You don't have to walk like that person. You don't have to think that people see you as that person. You are delivered from that person. You don't have to be that person. Our jobs as parents is so beautiful that we get to build these children up. We get to build them up to be their best so that when they go out into the world, they're carrying it's discipleship for your children. It's discipleship for your children. Making sure that you teach them, that you show them, you pour confidence into them, you pour everything that you need to pour into them so that they can be successful and thriving out in the world. You pour that into them. And if for some reason it didn't make the cut, like while they were in your home, you continue to pour into them even while they're out of the home. You want to see them be their absolute best. You want to see them be able to achieve things and attain things that maybe you didn't even get to achieve and attain. God, that's a whole nother conversation. Parents who are jealous of their children's success. Parents who are jealous of their children's success. Baby, I listen. She was raised by Effie Lee. Effie Lee was an encourager, and she was not just an encourager out in the streets and not in her home because people do that for looks and for clout, whatever. Everything that I did, my mom was there. When I wrote my first book, I drove 3 hours away to a vendor event to sell books. She went with me. She didn't necessarily want to go because she was not feeling the greatest. I was pregnant. She went with me. My husband couldn't go. He had to work and take care of the kids. Any vendor event that I went to, my mom went with me to help me to make sure that I was good and she could support me. Events for my children, she went. She encouraged, she supported, she motivated. She always told us that we did a good job. She poured that mindset into me. And now that is the mindset that I do my best to pour into my children, to try to be there at all of their things, to try to encourage them and give them support. But yes, I'm also going to tell you when you're being lazy and you're not even trying. But it is a form of discipleship. Let this mind be in these children, which is also in Christ Jesus. And they're not going to get it if we're constantly criticizing and acting in a form of self-righteousness that suppresses their mind. Your self-righteousness as a mother will suppress the mind of your children. It will suppress their spirit. It will suppress their heart. It will suppress all of the things, and they will not be able to walk in the level of confidence and accomplishments that they would be able to walk in if we just discipled them and loved them and cared for them and stewarded them the way that God has put it in us to do it. If it wasn't in you to do, then you wouldn't be seeking to be a godly mother. But because you're seeking to be a godly mother, God is going to pour those things into you so that you can pour them into your children. He says, seek for me and you will find me. Knock and the door will be open to you. So maybe you're not fully self-righteous. Maybe I'm not fully self-righteous. I'm going to go back over the list and check myself and check my spirit to make sure that I'm okay, make sure that I'm good. You can have a conversation with your child and hopefully they feel comfortable enough to tell you the truth as far as if they think that you're controlling, if they think that you don't ever apologize, if they think that you compare, like how they feel about themselves. Like you don't even have to bring in the self-righteousness. Just ask the child how they feel about themselves. How do they feel about themselves? Are they confident? Do they know that they're loved? Do they know that they're cared for? My mom used to drive me crazy. Yo. She'd be like, are you sad? Are you depressed? And it used to drive me nuts until I couldn't hear her say it anymore. Because when I couldn't hear her say it anymore was in a season where I really needed to hear her say it. It was in a season where I really needed to hear her say it so I could say, yes, I am sad and I am depressed. But she would always just make, like, that was her way of asking me if I was okay. And so for my kids, I ask them all the time, like, hey, do you feel loved? And it seems so dumb, like right now saying it, it seems so dumb. But one day I pray that when they need to feel loved the most, that they will understand how much they are loved. That they will understand that me asking them all the time, do they feel loved, was my way of trying to find out what their mindsets were at that moment and at that time, so that I could take what they told me and go to God and say, okay, God, what's going on here? What do I need to do? How do I need to help the child? How do I need to help them show up? Right? So let this mind be in me, be in them, which is also in Christ Jesus. The mind of Christ Jesus is Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit, right? It is a mind of love. It is a mind of peace. It is a mind of joy. It is a mind of kindness. It is a mind of self control. It is a mind of long suffering. It is a mind of gentleness. It is a mind of meekness. Let that mind be in me, and may I pour that mind into my children. And may they pour that mind into their children. May they pour that mind into their friends. God, may they pour their mind into their leaders and into their teachers. It is a discipleship that it can be very easy to say that this child is mine and I'm going to raise this child the way that I want to raise this child. And I'm going to raise this child with me being right. Everything that I say, I know what's best for this child. I know that this is right. And it causes us to go wayward in the way that we have these conversations with our children. It causes us to go wayward in the things that we say to them. It causes us to just be completely off track with how we're raising them up. And people raise up hostile children and they don't even realize it. They raise up children who are rebellious and you can't ever say anything to them. They've built up this form of pride while trying to live up to the expectation of the parent that is self-righteously ruling over them. And I don't want that to be me. I don't want that to be you. I feel like we can go on with this, but listen, I gotta go. So, at the end of the day, we need to check ourselves. We need to check ourselves. We're going to check ourselves against these things. Do we always need the last word? Do we apologize to our children? Do we correct them more than we encourage them? Do we compare them to others? Do we believe that our way is the only right way? Are we open to receiving feedback about our parenthood, even from our children? Do we focus on their outward behavior and not what's going on in their heart? Do we go to God about our children? Do we ask Him for the plans and for the wisdom? Do we have the humility in our heart if God was to tell us to take them from a certain thing or shift in a certain way? Do we have the love and the humility in our heart to do this thing to make sure that our child is operating in their best according to God's will and according to God's standards? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves and be completely honest and truthful about, so that we can find out about ourselves as mothers who are seeking to raise these kingdom children. Ask yourself these questions, be completely truthful and honest about it, and then seek God for direction. All right? All right, y'all. Time has been spent. I love you guys so much. I pray that you have an amazing week. And I pray that you jump on my email list so that we can keep in touch and in communication in that way. And not just on podcasts. Like, I actually want to know your name. I actually want to know your name, who you are, what you do, and what it is that I can do to support you in that way. All right. I love you guys. Take care, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed the episode. Make sure that you catch us every week here on the Kingdom Wife Mom Boss podcast, where we are bringing you new episodes, new content, new information, new empowerment, new strategies, and new strength. Until then, I'll catch you next time.